Welcome to my Black Mage guide for the 4th floor of Alexander Savage. Hopefully you'll learn something from this video whether you've cleared already or are still progressing. I'll be going over tips and tricks as well as movement and dealing with mechanics without much of an impact to your DPS. Here are my gear recommendations as of patch 3.15. Any of these weapons are fine, but of course the highest item level is recommended since weapon damage is your most important stat. The accuracy cap for A4S Savage is 540 and is not very difficult to reach even without Gordian gear, so don't worry about this too much. I recommend Somal, Tart, and Draconian Potion of Intelligence for consumables, but X potions are fine if you're low on gil. At 6 seconds before pull, I cast Quelling Strikes, Sharp Cast, and Ley Lines in that order, and immediately start casting Fire 3. Then Enochian, Fire, Raging Strikes and Potion, Fire 4 3 times, Fire Starter, Swift Cast, Fire 4, Convert, Fire 4 twice, and finally Blizzard 3. It's important to keep an eye on your timers. If you miss a cast due to bad luck with AoEs and don't have enough time on Astral Fire or Enochian, cut your opener one cast short and go straight into Blizzard 3 if you lose Enochian otherwise. What happens next depends on your remaining MP. You can either cast Thunder, Blizzard, or wait for an MP tick before using Blizzard 4. Next you'll want to continue your rotation while waiting for the first quarantine. To ensure I'm not pulled into quarantine in Astral Fire with no MP, I end my rotation early by cutting out one Fire 4 so I'll have full MP 100% of the time in quarantine. You want to get out of there as quickly as possible, so I believe going in with a full MP bar is the safest option. Here's an example of me getting targeted by 2 Seeds of the Sky during my opener. You can get hit by the first one without any spell interruption if you're properly shielded with Adlo and Stone Skin, but it's a good idea to use Mana Ward or dodge the second one, especially if you're near Discord Orbs. The rest of the first leg is pretty simple, just DPS and dodge Seeds of the Sky. I use Sharpcast shortly before the leg appears and I get in position so I can still intercept Carnage lasers without moving. Safe spots depend on where your group stands when they're targeted, so try to memorize your spot and go there every time to minimize movement. At the start of the second leg, if I don't have Umbrella Ice 3 for a quick Fire 3, I'll Swift Cast it instead to weave Ley Lines. Always hold your Fire Starter until after quarantine happens because if you get pulled in you can use it to keep Astral Fire. Some people like to wait until after quarantine to use Ley Lines, but I prefer taking the chance because you're not always going to be selected. And it ensures Ley Lines is up at the start of the third leg so you can pair it with Raging Strikes and get the full effect before feeding dolls. Weave in Sprint after Fire Starter to prepare for Carnage, and if you're selected you can also use Mana Ward while running to your spot, which lets you survive 2 hits from Carnage if somebody misses a laser. If you take no damage from Carnage, Mana Ward will also let you stand in the Seeds of the Sky, so it serves 2 purposes here. Try to keep your Enochian going for as long as you can. This means you'll have to do a 3rd refresh instead of starting a new Enochian cycle, which you normally wouldn't do. All of your cooldowns with the exception of potions should be up for the beginning of the 3rd leg, so you'll want to have Sharpcast and Enochian off cooldown as well since this is the first real DPS check of the fight. The 3rd leg is the biggest DPS check not counting the enrage. The good news is you have all of your cooldowns available at the beginning of this phase, and if you have a bard, make sure they're playing full Requiem on this leg. During progression, it was a good idea to save potions and battle voids for this leg if you are having trouble killing it before the second set of dolls spawn, but it shouldn't be a problem now that it's much easier to obtain 210 gear. The big difference on this leg is the addition of dolls, and Black Mages happen to be one of the best feeders. Your goal here is to bring your Yawk doll down to around 15% before bringing it to the Strap doll to get absorbed. If you're fighting a doll and going into Blizzard 3, it's a good idea to switch targets and cast Thunder on the leg before Blizzard 4 for a small DPS gain as I do in this video. Your Yawk doll will not completely die if you accidentally kill it, but it will revive with full HP and it will be almost impossible to feed it to the current Strap doll before Wirbelwind, so be careful. One of the best ways to beat the enrage is letting all of the Strap dolls explode since the only thing they drain is your MP. This also means your healers and casters need to be ready to get their MP back with skills like Aether Flow and Shroud. It's pretty much free DPS on the boss as long as your healers can handle the MP loss. As a Black Mage, all you need to do is cast Blizzard 3 before Wirbelwind finishes casting and refresh your Enochian before or after Wirbelwind, depending on how much time you have left. Having infinite MP is pretty nice on a fight like this. The 4th leg is much like the 3rd leg except you have Nisi in this phase and 2 sets of dolls. This guide will be covering the sacrifice method, so if you do get Nisi, you'll want to stay away from the rest of the party until the debuff wears off. Convert will be on cooldown here, so I use Swift Cast for Fire 3 again to weave in Enochian, then 3 fire 4s on the leg, fire starter, sprint, and by now your doll should have spawned. Hit it with a fire 4 in Blizzard to get aggro, then cast Thunder on the leg again and hope for some Thundercloud procs. Continue getting its HP down while waiting for Nisi to fall off, holding any procs you get during this time so you can use them for movement while feeding. In my group we kill both strap dolls in this phase, but if you're low on DPS, letting them use Whirlwind is also an option. Next up is Discoid and Seeds of the Sky. Dodge and try not to interrupt casts, and the rest of the phase just repeats. You can also help your healers by getting a Discoid orb during this time if they're struggling. I thought I should mention this thing I do on the second set of dolls. If you used Convert early in the third leg, it should be off cooldown at this point unless your raid DPS is really high. This allows you to hit the leg and strap doll with a flare and Convert to get some MP back. Now for the moment you've all been waiting for, the final phase against the manipulator. You can use your usual opener here since mostly everything will be off cooldown except for Convert if you used it at the end of the fourth leg. But if you have MP regen from Bard or Machinist, you can still get the extra cast without using Convert. This is one of the rare moments where Ballad can be a DPS gain for Black Mages if Foe Requiem isn't an option, since your healers will most likely need MP at this point. You'll want to stand as close to the stacking position for the blue Discord orb as you can to minimize movement. In my group I'm able to stand right on top of it so I don't need to move at all in the final phase unless I'm feeding dolls, intercepting Carnage, or dodging Seed of the Sky. Next up is Royal Pentacle. Much like feeding dolls, Black Mages are also very good at sacrificing since you can get your MP back as soon as you revive. If you're sacrificing yourself, you should save Sprint and Swift Cast for now. Keep casting until you've exhausted your MP and by now the Royal Pentacle orb should have spawned. Now sprint and use any procs you can before you die. Knowing when to sacrifice and being able to quickly sprint through 2 of the orbs without thinking about it is the key to keeping up your DPS during this part. Having a quick raise after your death is also important, so plan ahead with your healers to avoid any confusion and have them save their Swift Cast for raising. When you're alive again, Swift Cast Blizzard 3 to get your MP back quickly and get close to the spot where your doll will spawn, but don't get too far away from your party because Carnage comes first. I recommend sacrificing on the first Royal Pentacle since you've just used your cooldowns and also because Raging Strikes will be off cooldown at the second Royal Pentacle, so it would be a waste. It only takes around 15 seconds from the time I start running until I'm back on my feet and casting. Speaking of which, if you're sacrificing you'll want to have the FC buff back on your feet too, which lowers the time on weakness after being revived. Less weakness means more DPS and it also prevents double weakness for people who are sacrificing twice in a row. After Carnage, dolls will spawn. If you sacrificed, you'll have weakness so you should minimize any damage taken by using Mana Wall and Mana Ward during this part. In the final phase, feeding dolls is a bit more dangerous since you'll also have to deal with double Carnage 0. If you're waiting to feed, you'll have to be careful with Luminous Aetherplasm. Getting 4 stacks of this will kill you and anyone near you, so wait for it to go off before feeding, and bring your doll in before the next one goes off. In my group we feed our Melee's doll first, usually after the first Carnage 0, and our ranged dolls after the second Carnage 0 when we're healed up. Ranged DPS lose nothing from waiting to feed as long as it's done before you get 4 stacks of Luminous Aetherplasm or the strap doll explodes, so take your time and make sure not to kill anybody. Once you're done feeding, get to your Carnage 0 spot and prepare for Whirlwind. Now the fight just repeats except you aren't going to be sacrificing yourself on the next Royal Pentacle. If the healer and Bard are both sacrificing on this Royal Pentacle, they'll both have full MP after being revived since healer LB3 is used to revive everyone. Raging Strikes will be off cooldown if you used it at the start of the phase, so now is the perfect time for Foe, especially if your Bard has a full MP bar. Since the phase repeats after Royal Pentacle, do the same thing you did before. Getting your doll down and surviving will be much easier this time without weakness. After feeding your doll, it's smooth sailing from here. No more difficult mechanics happen except for the last Royal Pentacle, which you shouldn't need to worry about. Stay spread for Carnage 0, stack for the blue Discord orb, and DPS as hard as you can because your goal is to kill it before the boss casts Mortal Revolution, which is the enrage around 13 minutes into the fight. If you've made it this far, congratulations. You're ready to clear as long as you have the DPS to beat the enrage. I hope this video will help you clear the fight or improve your DPS. If you have any tips that I didn't mention, feel free to leave them in the comments. I just want to say that this video wouldn't have happened if it weren't for all the great comments I get from Black Mages who watch my videos. I want to thank everybody who watched my guide and I hope to make many more in the future, so please look forward to it.